Good morning. I'd like to call the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and Senate Committee on Finance subcommittees on K-12 Higher Education CIP meeting to order. Would the secretary call the roll?
Senators Buck, Canizaro, Scheibel, Stone, Dondero Loop, Assembly Members Hafen, Howdigi,
Here.
Koenig, Monroe Moreno, O'Neill, Torres Fawcett, Yeager, and Chair Backus.
I am present, and please mark Assembly Member Hafen absent, excused. And I believe Chair Monroe Marino will be joining us shortly. However, she has a bill presentation, and we may be finished before she makes her way back. First and foremost, I apologize for our late start. We were trying to wrap up some stuff. And on today's agenda, we have our Legislative Council Bureau presenting the one-time appropriations and capital improvement projects. Following that, we will have public comment. And to provide public comment or testimony this morning, you can call 888-475-4499. When prompted, provide the meeting ID, enter 841-3289. 885, and then press the number sign when prompted for a participant ID. With that, I will go ahead and welcome our acting director, Diane Thornton, to make the presentation, and anyone else on your team joining you this morning. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Diane Thornton, Acting Director for the Legislative Council Bureau. And here today with me is Deputy Director Guinan and Chief of Operations John Vietti. And thank you for the opportunity to be able to present the funding plan for the legislature's capital improvement projects. Today's presentation is going to cover some critical infrastructure needs and the challenges along with proposed improvements to address them. The CIP plan is more than just about maintaining our facilities. It's also about making the necessary investments today to guarantee that this building and campus will be capable of supporting legislative work for decades and generations to come. As you know, the original legislative building and also the state printing office were constructed in the 1960s and were designed for a pre-digital age. They're not built with modern infrastructure or technology in mind, and today we're facing aging and outdated systems that must be upgraded to protect the integrity of these buildings and also the essential work that we do within them. Some of our most pressing needs today involve basic safety. These include seismic retrofitting, asbestos abatement, and systems for fire safety and suppression. There's also some other critical needs, such as ADA compliance. The building's HVAC and electrical distribution systems have reached their end of life, along with our phone system, which was last updated in 2012 and is no longer supported by the vendor and is at end of life, and it's a vital public safety concern for both communication and the work that we do. All of these improvements are critical to ensuring the continuity of government.
Ms. Thornton, when you speak, and it's funny because we were kind of giggling with you last night about this. So how this room's set up, we can sometimes not hear you with this microphones. If you guys don't mind talking closer to the microphone or just a little bit louder when you are presenting.
How's the volume of my voice right now? Can you hear it? Okay, great. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Guinan. I'm a Deputy Director here with the LCB, and it is my honor to come before you today to help present the CIP plan. I'm just going to go through a couple of examples of things that we need to get done. So to return to a point that Diane made just a few minutes ago, or Director Thornton, I should say, when the legislative building, the original legislative building came online, so to speak, there was no online. There was no internet, there was no IT infrastructure. And yet today, nearly every aspect of the work that we do here depends on digital systems. And so without modernization, we're going to continue to experience inefficiencies and limitations that hinder the legislature's ability to function effectively. And we have, in fact, over previous sessions and at some points during this session, seen some disruptions that have been caused by either stuff that hasn't yet been updated fully or that has been updated and isn't quite got all the bugs out of it yet. And unless we address those problems, we're going to continue to see those things happen. So one example of something that's critical to us that we need to get resolved is the successful operation of our legislative functions generally, which rely on what I think you all are familiar with, which is a 30-year-old program called the Session Manager. That program touches nearly every aspect of what legislators and staff do in this building every day, from committee hearings to floor sessions to the legal division's work in drafting and amending legislation. And Session Manager, as I mentioned, is 30 years old. It is at the end of its life, and we're limping along with it, but we need to prepare to replace that. So one of the asks that we'll be making today is for funds to start a long-term planning project to replace Session Manager because it's a complex problem, and it's one that's going to take a little while to scope out and do appropriately. And I think that Tyler Saylor, our CIO, will be discussing some of those more technical elements in just a little bit. But as we address all these important operational and safety concerns, we also have an opportunity to modernize and improve the overall functionality of the legislative building. For our citizens, excuse me, to participate in the legislative process easily and effectively, we have to bring this facility up to modern standards to foster accessibility, engagement, and participation for everyone, no matter where they are, and no matter who they are, and no matter what their ability is to take part. We have the ability to make things better and easier for them and for you, and we need to do that. So by reconfiguring and upgrading our meeting rooms, providing more space to legislators and staff, and integrating modern technology, we can ensure that our legislative operations are conducted as efficiently as possible now and well into the future without being constrained by outdated infrastructure. It's important to note that many of the projects we're going to discuss today are interconnected. They create a sort of cascading effect where one necessary upgrade depends on another. Just one further example I'll give you. Before we can complete critical renovations like asbestos abatement, seismic retrofitting, and other systems replacements, we'll have to move staff out of the building. They'll be relocated, as the scale of these improvements makes it impractical and, more importantly, unsafe for that staff to be in the building while this work is being done. So this is in part why constructing a new office building is an essential part of our proposal. At the same time, this element of the plan addresses another important issue, the Sedway building. The Sedway building was built in 1980 or the early 1980s, and it was designed as a bank and not intended to serve as a government office. And at this point, well into its life, it has a lot of costly deferred maintenance that would be needed, and it doesn't provide adequate space or infrastructure even for the staff that are currently housed there, much less for any additional staff. So this plan calls for Sedway to be taken down, and now I'll turn it back over to Director Thornton.
Diane Thornton again for the record. Chair, is this close enough? Can you hear me? Okay. By constructing a new staff office building, we can provide a more functional work environment and also creating the opportunity to renovate and expand the areas within the original legislative building. This approach will allow us to maximize efficiency and reduce the long-term costs and ensure that the legislature has the infrastructure to operate effectively and the needs and demands of the legislature in the future can be solved. Another long-standing challenge, as I'm sure you're all aware of, is parking. Limiting parking has always been an issue for public and the staff, particularly during the legislative sessions. So as part of this long-term investment, we're proposing the construction of a new parking structure. This will help to accommodate the needs of staff, legislators, and visitors, and will improve accessibility to the building. Because of session, we have a limited window in which major work can take place. We plan on phasing these projects around session to ensure that staff and legislators and the public will continue to have access to the legislative building. Much like our opening of the west entry, where we got the opening, it opened, however, we're still doing ongoing work to the outside, and we'll continue that work after session's over. The goal is to complete critical improvements while minimizing disruptions to the legislative session and to public engagement. Now, Chair, I'd like to hand over the presentation to our Chief and Deputy Chief of Operations to walk you through the critical infrastructure needs and our operations CIP.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Vietti, Chief of Operations here at the LCB. I have Dirk Goring helping us with the PowerPoint today. He's the Deputy Chief of Operations, and he helps me with everything I do. Today I want to talk to you about our building needs and our campus needs. Firstly, we're going to go over our critical infrastructure needs. We would like to do seismic upgrades on our older buildings. We need to replace electrical distribution systems and switchgear that are at end of life. We need to replace ductwork, HVAC equipment that's also at end of life. We would like to expand our fire suppression system throughout the whole building, and also continue our asbestos abatement program. With the seismic retrofitting, it is necessary to ensure long-term safety and prevent unexpected disruptions. During our current projects, we have discovered that the walls around chambers were not sufficiently supported. In a major earthquake, one of these non-supported walls could collapse and cause serious injury or possibly death. Next is our replacement of our electrical distribution systems and switchgear. We would like to bring that up to current codes, replace end-of-life equipment, and also improve energy efficiencies. In the next slide, you can see that these are some examples of seismic retrofitting. Our state printing office is about 57,000 square feet, and it was constructed in the early 60s. Our legislative building was built in the late 60s, and it's about 150,000 square feet. In 1971, there was a San Fernando earthquake, which really changed code compliance on seismic retrofitting on buildings. And both of these buildings were built before that, and there's been substantial changes to seismic building codes since these structures were built. And just a fun fact, in the continental USA, Nevada is actually ranked third for the most seismic activity. Both structural systems are load-bearing, existing tilt-up construction. Due to the design and age of these buildings, it is critical to do our seismic retrofitting and ensure structural longevity and safety for all. The next pictures show you some examples of our electrical distribution system and our switchgear. These systems are about 55 years old, and they have a typical lifespan of about 30 years. Age-induced failures related to circuit breakers and motor control centers can lead to interruptions to essential functions of the LCB and, in worst case, fires. Our main distribution switchboards have been obsolete for more than 45 years. To replace or repair any of this equipment, it requires major shutdown of the facility. In some cases, the whole old side of the building would have to be shut down to work on some of these areas. These parts are at end of life and can no longer be purchased. And so we have our in-house staff actually rebuilding a lot of this equipment, or we have to go through a third-party vendor in order to get it fixed or to working order again. Next, we're going to talk about our HVAC upgrades and our ductwork upgrades, getting up the current building codes, replacing the end-of-life equipment, and improving energy efficiencies. This equipment is also 55 years old. You can see in the pictures there, it's very dated. The age of this equipment could cause substantial downtime for the LCB if not replaced. This equipment uses an asbestos tape on the seams. When you turn on this HVAC equipment, it pressurizes the ductwork, and it expands and contracts as this pressurizes the systems and depressurizes as the HVAC turns on and off. When that happens, these seams get to a stress point, almost like bending a wire back and forth, and these seams expand, then you lose efficiencies by losing that cold air or hot air inside the open plenum space. Plus, there's potential for that asbestos tape to break and possibly create a dust that could get into our ductwork as well. The current ductwork is out of date and requires custom fabrication to repair. The asbestos in all areas of this system should be removed and replaced to keep our occupants safe. Age-induced failures lead to substantial downtime and disruptions to the legislative operations. If we do not replace the failing duct work, we may not comply with current ventilation code requirements. New equipment would improve energy efficiencies and lead to long-term cost savings. Next, we're going to talk about expanding our fire suppression infrastructure and continuing our asbestos abatement program. On this slide, you can see our chambers and our committee rooms. They do not have fire suppression, and they do have a very high asbestos content. We would like to finish adding fire suppression to all the areas that do not have fire suppression in the building right now. Adding the fire sprinkler systems reduce the risk of spreading fires by 90% and the reduce of fatalities by 82%. This next slide shows some examples of our asbestos within the building. We have some I-beams, and also that tape that you can see on the ductwork is the asbestos tape that I was talking about. In order to complete our projects, like the fire suppression and the seismic retrofit, it would require additional abatement to be done to the building. Doing our latest construction projects, we've had a very good head start on the abatements that's needed in the building. And if we get approved for these projects, it would help us get most of the areas abated in the building. These next slides, I'd like to go over a few pictures with you showing you some of the challenges that we have for space allocation within our buildings. The first picture there, you can see this used to just be a storage room that now we've put a desk into, and now it serves both purposes. It's a storage room and an office now. The second picture there, you can see that it's actually an electrical closet. You can see the electrical panels on the wall. Again, we've had to place a desk in there because we don't have space to put staff. The third picture is our janitorial room, which is actually a fire riser room. We have over 20 janitors that try to keep this building as clean as possible, and they use this space actually to store their chemicals. We have a washer and dryer. We wash all of our rags in-house to try to save money. And we also have to conduct our safety meetings, our group meetings, and it's a very small room, and to have 20 plus staff in such a confined space, plus share it with mechanical equipment, is very difficult. In our next picture, it shows some of the IT space. You can actually see a server in the corner there, and this used to be used as a conference room. Since then, they've had to put 3 full-time employees into this space. Plus, they use it for storage for laptops, desktops. They use it as workstations to rebuild computers. And it's a very poorly configured space. You can see the big columns separating the room. It's not an ideal location to work in. In the middle picture, you can see one of our main employee break rooms for the LCB. There's a lot of staff that use this employee break room. We actually have 2 refrigerators, a microwave, and we now serve coffee for all the committee meetings. And with that being said, we have staff in here that makes that coffee and delivers it to the rooms. So this had to turn into the new coffee making area for the LCB. And so we have staff members trying to do their job and provide this service. At the same time, there's somebody trying to make their breakfast burrito and get food for the morning and get their day started. In the third picture here, you can see how we've taken some existing space where we had elevated ceilings, and we actually placed a mezzanine above some office areas here. And this is a kind of a make-it-yourself kit mezzanine that we had to place that we keep retention records up there that are long-term storage. Plus, we use it for additional storage too. But we're really trying to maximize any extra space that we have within our facilities. On the next slide, I want to talk to you a little bit about our egress paths within the building. Egress paths should really be kept clear and free of clutter at all times, so that way if there ever was an emergency, we could vacate the building very quickly and keep everybody safe within the building. This is the first picture there is the hallway heading out towards the loading dock. Due to restrictions on space, we store our ladders on hanging hooks inside the hallway there, we also have our hand trucks. On the right, you have office supplies. At the end of that picture, there's actually a commercial shredder. And so where people are going to shred confidential documents out in the public in the middle of a hallway with people walking by due to lack of space within the building. In the center picture, that's our path to get to our freight elevator, also a supply hallway now, and for general services to keep notepads and pens and everything that we need in order to operate and do our daily functions. The third picture is actually in the legal area. This is where legal keeps all their bills. And there's been numerous times that I've had to walk down that hallway, and you'll have a legal staff member replacing bills or updating bills within this filing system. They're having to utilize the whole space because they got a stack on the floor, and they're updating, and people are trying to walk around them and get to the restrooms that are right there or get to their office, and they're creating an obstruction in the hallway. So with all those pictures, that really illustrates the fact that our existing buildings are beyond full occupancy for office space. The buildings team has remodeled many normal size offices. We've taken normal size offices and we've divided them in half and built 2 offices out of 1 office, which makes them very small. Some of these offices are so small that if you reach out with your hands, you can touch the walls on both sides. We have a hard time hiring staff because we just do not have the office space to put the new staff into right now. So our options are to have them work remote or try to find another decently sized office that we possibly could divide and then have somebody lose half their office and half of their storage space of what they used to have. And of course, on this campus, we have insufficient parking for current use and long-term demand. We've all talked to people, I think, that said, sorry, I was running late. I had to park 2 or 3 blocks away to get here. And you know, when people are coming to these meetings that they're trying to make it on time and then there's no parking for them and they're having to park 3 blocks away, then they come late for the meeting. We should be giving the people a reliable place to park so that way they know that they can make it on time for their meeting. So our proposed solution to this plan is and hopefully for the next 50 years, if we get approved for this, is to build a new parking structure with nearly 600 parking spaces and a 100,000 square foot building. We believe that the legislature has needed this for a long time. In 2005, the legislature actually started a planning process they were thinking about building a building over there on 6th Street back then. And we have drawings and conceptual drawings showing multiple options. One of those options being a 100,000 square foot building with a parking structure, just like we're talking about. Some of the other options was actually even building up to 4 buildings across the street. So we think that this is a very reasonable fix to our problems that we have here. And then our next topic here is the Carson City Campus property acquisition and improvements to allow us to create a better workflow in other existing areas around our buildings. This is to address some of the issues that we have in the new build building, in this 1997 building, make a better flow, continue with some of the remodels, again with kind of that continuing effect. If we move people from the old building to remodel that to make it better to enlarge some of these committee rooms and stuff, it has a trickle-down effect. So there's still a little bit of remodels that have to happen in other areas as well. So this next slide shows you the footprint of where we would put the parking structure and the new building. We would like to take down the Sedway building, and you can see the drive path there where we could have the gyms come down and drop off people still, so people can get picked up from the parking structure and still get rides to the main building. The building would complement our building. We would like to widen the crosswalk there on 5th Street, try to make it safer. Hopefully I want to add a little bit of bigger lights to that area and make it a little bit safer for people to cross that street. It also has a facilities department connected to the parking structure. The new parking garage addresses immediate and long-term parking needs. And it includes the facility and grounds equipment shop to staff equipment and the generator, and also give them their workshop space and hold their equipment that they have. It's a lot better. You get a lot more life out of a lot of the equipment that we use, like the backhoes and the bobcats and the lockers, if we can store that equipment inside a nice area. The new annex building allows us to have proper office space for staff, retain records, and have storage. This building would allow us to vacate the old side of the main building so upgrades can be completed there. This also would help us consolidate staff by division to enhance morale and efficiencies. This next slide shows us some examples of what the committee rooms could be remodeled. We can make them bigger. We can have more people at the dais, and also more people in the audience. Our ask on this would be to be able to remodel all the old half of the main building. This will allow us to remove the hazardous materials that still exist and allow us to build back with purpose and better flow of the workspace and committee rooms. This allows us to enlarge and modernize the committee rooms 2149, 2144, 3142, and 3143. This would also allow us to relocate and upgrade the Assembly and Senate kitchens for code compliance and better ventilation. Truly getting a commercial hood and some of the commercial elements that these kitchens should have. We could modernize the chambers, fixing the seismic concerns, and prepare for the future of growth of Nevada, and possibly the additional and possibility of having an additional legislator be able to sit inside the chambers as well. We could rebuild the old committee rooms to make them safer, larger, and more functional. We would install safety upgrades like the fire sprinklers and the removal of asbestos. We could make the building more ADA compliant. We could do the technology upgrades and create more improved workspace for support capabilities such as IT, AVH, janitorial, and general services. This would help them support the legislative needs more effectively. We would like to eliminate those obstructions of building egress and circulation due to insufficient space. This would include building proper storage areas so we can remove potential hazards from hallways. And now I'd like to hand it back over to Diane.
Diane Thornton for the record.
Oh, our director, Diane.
On this slide, for our operations capital improvement projects, we're requesting a total of $228 million. This slide shows the cost projections of the proposed improvements, which includes renovations to the legislative building, the new parking garage, and a staff building. This next slide is our projections for the improvements for IT service projects, and our Chief Information Officer will go over these.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Tyler Saylor, the Chief Information Officer for the Council Bureau. I'd like to sum up most of our technology projects this time around into three categories. One, much like you've heard from our operations folks, asset management, meaning many things in our arena are at their end of life. Our phone system is almost ready to get its driver's permit, and some of the individual phones are from the 90s or further back. Some of the servers that run our critical applications like Session Manager, the website, and Nellis are just plain old at the end of their life. We expect that kind of technology to last about 7 years, and after that we can no longer get support from the vendor or get replacement parts for them. The next category is continuity of government and cybersecurity improvements. These are things like our legislature IP space project that would let us seamlessly and automatically fail over between internet connections. As we've seen recently, when we have an internet problem and it takes staff intervention to switch between connections, it can interrupt what we're doing. And we'd like to make that automatic and seamless so that meetings continue on without interruption, including things like our secure chat project so that we have an authenticated way of communicating with each other and, so to speak, a closed garden as things like text messages and other platforms become less secure. The final category would be efficiency and quality of life improvements. And some of these are our pilot project for fiscal notes, as an example, to help with AI summarization, or our document management project, which is on this next slide, that would help us reduce the bulk of our paper document storage and digitize those documents, as well as help us to implement a meaningful schedule for retaining those documents and aging them out. Pause for any questions.
Again, Diane Thornton for the record. So this slide shows our total funding plan for the capital improvement projects. We're asking for a total of $233.4 million, and this, of course, also includes $1 million for the dues and registrations for national organizations. And then finally, on our next slide, we show how we would phase these projects to ensure that the building remains open to the public. We believe this is an investment in the future for the state of Nevada and the Nevada Legislature, and to ensure that it remains stable and secure and well-equipped for the institution for generations to come. So thank you, Chair. That completes our presentation, and we stand ready for any questions.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the very detailed and comprehensive presentation and explanation. We do have a couple questions from our committee members. We'll go ahead and start with the Assembly Member Howdegui.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do want to go back to the slide, because my question, slide 17. My questions are on the Carson City campus improvements. And if I may, Madam Chair, just a few questions. First, you said something that I found interesting about wanting to widen the sidewalk and install the lights. Doesn't the Carson City, wouldn't that be the responsibility of Carson City to take care of that? Or would they be responsible for the payment of that, but we suggested, or?
John Vietti for the record. That's a great question. Typically, yes. That's a very timely process, and even the flashers that we have today because we paid for them. A lot of the times when you do the request to the county, you kind of get in line with everybody else. And so if we would like to have it immediately, it would probably be best for us to pay for it initially, but then the long-term maintenance of it, they actually take care of it afterwards.
Thank you. And I do have some questions regarding that that annex building. I know the request is to tear down the existing Setaway building and build something new. Can you talk to me a little bit about why that decision was made to tear down instead of remodel? You touched a little bit about that. Like, how many offices do we have in the existing building? How many offices will we have in the new building? And then you had mentioned in your presentation about, building morale, like keeping divisions together. Give me the details about, like, where are they now? Are they split between the two buildings? Are they split between floors? So how many offices are there now? How many in the new building? And how will the new building add to the cohesiveness of the divisions?
Jonathan Vietti, for the record. So in the new building, it's approximately 34,000 square feet right now, and we're asking for 100,000 square feet. As far as the office flow, if you've been in the Sedway building, there's a large atrium in the center. It was never actually designed to be an office building. It was designed to be a bank initially, and then we've added on to it. We built a couple additional wings. It never really had the proper flow of a normal building. When you're doing new construction, you're able to build it in a way where you can have all your staff allocated where you need them to be, and not split up from side to side as much as it is now, and also build some of those amenities for those storage areas or conference rooms that they need, and you can have those in those areas that they need it in.
I am going to follow up to that question. So So you mentioned, I wrote down, it's 34,000 right now in the existing building, and we're going to go to 100,000. So how many offices are currently in the Sedway building, and then how many would be in the new building? And then, so are there, and then who's going to live in the new building? What divisions?
So we'd be moving some of the people also from this building into the new building in order to free up space in this building. As far as the number of offices, I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. And we're still working on the design of the interior space. We have some conceptual layouts of the way that it would be laid out right now. So I could get back to you on that as well.
Diane Thornton for the record. I just want to mention also, we have people that are separated across the campus. So we have like IT in both state printing office and over in the original legislative building. We have some legal that's over in the state printing office and then separated over in many different offices throughout the legislative building. Additionally, if you think about where our legislative police are located, they're down in the basement of the garage. I mean, that is a tiny little room that wasn't ever meant for that. So if we were to build a new building, we would take all those facilities and actually build proper locker rooms for our police force over in the new legislative building. So there's a lot of things that we've been kind of stuffing people into that would allow them to have true areas and what they're meant to do.
Can I keep going, Madam Chair? Thank you. No, and I appreciate that. I see that office every day when I walk down to my car and walk. It's sad, sad little. So I do appreciate that everyone would be able to be together and have their space. And then I just have another question, because I was going through the deferred maintenance list, and have we just never kept up to date with replacing stuff and upgrading stuff? Like why is it so lengthy? And have we just not taken care of ourselves and what we need? Can you?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. Diane Thornton for the record again. At a fundamental level, this is just down to the age of the buildings. We're now at a tipping point where if we don't address these, it's going to cost more in the future. I would liken it to owning a home. At some point, you're going to have to, if you're in it long enough, you're going to have to change the roof. You're going to have to maybe get a new water heater, a new HVAC system. And that's where we are with these facilities.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and we'll go to Chair Dondera-Loop.
Thank you very much, and I'm just very grateful that my end of life wasn't 30. So can we talk a little bit about the cost difference between renovations to Sedway versus the new building?
Thank you very much, Senator, for the question. Diane Thornton for the record. When we looked at doing renovations to Sedway, it would approximately be about $16.3 million to do all the renovations necessary. That's not including if we decided to get rid of the atrium that John spoke about in the middle. If we were able to fill that in and to add more space, that would be probably an extra $2 million. However, because for the last 20 years, as John mentioned, there was a plan back in 2005 to add an office building for the legislature. So it's been 20 years coming that we've been making do with the space that we've had. And so we would still need to build some type of smaller office building to house staff. So even if building another smaller office building, say like a 60,000 square foot, I think that's about $76 million. So you put all those numbers together, you're looking at either operating two buildings, which costs more to do, for about $92 million and a new building, which we're asking for about $116 million. And I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. And with that, has there been any discussion about, and I'm not suggesting, I'm just asking, has there been any discussion about leasing space versus, constructing the new office building?
Thank you for the question, Diane Thornton for the record. Yes, we did look into leasing, but in the end, what we found is that keeping staff close to the legislative building is essential to the work that we do. I can only imagine if you needed to have a meeting with your fiscal staff and they were a mile down the road and they'd have to drive over to meet with you and try to find parking. So as you can see, what we need to do is to be close to our legislative members, especially during legislative session. The other concern was security of the documents. Everything that we do is confidential within the Legislative Council Bureau, and if we're renting space, we can't guarantee the same level of security. And lastly, I would say the last concern would be the cybersecurity. And as far as having multiple locations, it's more risky to ensure that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that information.
I'm going to go to Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Bacchus. I'm new on this committee and just kind of learning my way, but I was wondering if you could explain the process for the CIP. So you submit this to the governor. I'm assuming it's built into his budget. And then, or is it where we as a legislative body have to decide this is more of a priority than, say, K-12 CIP or higher ed CIP? How does that process work? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Senator Buck. Diane Thornton for the record. Generally, in the past, the CIP that we send over to the executive budget for inclusion, the last two bienniums, they were not included in the governor's executive budget. Does that answer your question, Senator?
So this one is not in the budget right now?
Correct. Okay. It is not.
I'll go to Senator Stone.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate it. Assuming that everything gets built in accordance with the schedule that you have, it seems like we're going to have about 250,000 square feet of space for our legislative offices. Is that correct?
Well, it'd be 100,000 square feet for the new office building.
And this is 150,000 square feet. So we'd have 250,000. So, and I understand that we want to build the annex so that we can move staff in. You made it very clear that we can't have people in this building when we're doing some, especially asbestos mitigation and retrofitting for earthquakes. Where was I going? So, getting back to the lease back that Senator Dondero Loop had mentioned, did you do any price comparisons at all to see what the difference in cost would be? Because we're looking at a pretty big sticker price here for what we're trying to do, understanding that we need to do something with this building. I understand the security issues that you mentioned, but did you look at a delta as far as what the difference between leasing and buying would be, and building?
Thank you, Senator Stone. Diane Thornton for the record. We did look at that, and I believe, and John will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about $20 to $30 per square foot for what we would need for the legislature. Yep. My chief of operations has corrected me. That was the purchase price for if we were going to purchase an off-site place would be about 20 to 30 per square foot. For leasing, it's about $2.50 to $3.
It's about $3 a square foot.
About $3 a square feet per month.
Okay. So assuming we build, and again, we have the 250,000 square feet, will we be oversupplied with office space, do you think, or do you think we're going to be able to absorb all of that space?
Diane Thornton for the record. Part of what we're doing is moving everyone out of the old legislative building and reconfiguring that space so that staff wouldn't come back into the legislative building. We'd be able to then redo all the committee rooms to make them larger and safer. I mean, some of those middle committee rooms, I don't know if you sat in them. I mean, you're touching knees with your neighbor sometimes. Right. So we would modernize those. Additionally, we'd be able to expand some of the legislator offices, and we'd be doing a new kitchen in that area. So the staff wouldn't be back. The staff would be over in the new office building along with our legislative police.
If I can follow up. Thank you. Yeah, like my colleague, I was concerned also about the large list of deferred maintenance and certainly the cost of repairing things. Typically, how do you report your capital improvement plan? Do you do it in 2-year increments, 5, 10, 15-year increments? We've got a lot of property down south. And so what I'm hoping is that future legislatures aren't going to see the sticker shock that we're seeing here today. We need to, put the life of the facilities, especially the new ones down south, and be able to prepare future legislatures for incremental costs to maintain our facilities, which hopefully will do a better job than we did on this particular building. But what is the typical CIP plan that LCB usually puts forward?
Thank you, for Senator Stone, Diane Thornton for the record, and I absolutely agree. And that is one of the things that both operations and IT is looking at, is that asset allocation and maintenance, and so we'll have a schedule now from moving forward. As far as in the past, unless Mr. Vietti here can answer, I wasn't here prior, so I'll see if you have a...
So, yeah, like Diane first said, a lot of this stuff is just like, she said, use the roof for an example. We're hitting that 50 years, which is a critical tipping point. Typically, your first tipping point is at that 20-year mark, and then you're going to see a lot of that equipment that needs to be replaced. Some of the stuff we have replaced through current CIPs. For example, our last one was our HVAC controls. And so that portion of that, we don't have to upgrade that again. I talked about the duct work, the fan rooms, some of that other equipment. And so a lot of the work we have been doing and we have been tracking, our IT department is working on a new asset management software program, and we're going to be able to develop that replacement structure a lot better. But hopefully with these upgrades, I'm hoping that we'd be sufficient for the next 50 years.
Okay. And then there's one last question, Madam Chair, and I'll be done. There's going to be a lot of traffic between the new annex building that is going to get built and obviously the present legislative building. Was there any thought about putting an overhead walkway instead of having a crosswalk? Because I'm concerned with the volume of people coming that we're going to have incidents. And it just makes sense to me that you would have, say, over-the-road bridge, if you will, to lead to the legislative building from the annex. Thank you, Madam Chair.
John Vietti, for the record, we have explored all options. That's very costly, but we have looked at it, and it also depends on what kind of security natures that you want in that overhead walkway. Do you want HVAC? Do you want it completely concealed? Or is it just a walkway with a canopy cover? These are all options. We also even looked at an underground tunnel. But due to our high water table, that's not an option because we have rivers flowing right underneath our buildings here. But we've explored all options, and it's something that we're definitely willing to entertain within this budget as well, because I agree with you, that would keep everybody a lot safer. And we haven't given up on it yet, but we're still looking into that.
Thank you so much. And along those lines, I can't help but I'm assuming that when the budget was put together for the new building and the new parking structure, that the cost of mitigating the soils and making sure, like going up to the 4 stories, is okay with those high water tables?
Correct. We're actually in the process right now of doing geotech reports to look at that, to find out, do we have to pull out soils, refill it, create lift stations in order to evacuate that water, what that actually looks like. And based on the construction that we've recently done around the campus as well, we have some good records of what's been done in the past, but we actually have it scheduled in 2 weeks for our geotech reports to bring a big drill out and start looking at those areas as well.
Sounds good. I do have a question, and I do think there was like a lot, now that I've watched the presentation, that there was a lot of thought that went into the construction schedule of these projects. And I see, obviously, we need the space to house all of our staff who occupies the older building. And I do like that the older building remodel, even though there's some stuff I think needs to be done, like yesterday, is going to be pushed out. I always worry of a situation where we may have a special session, because in my short term of serving in our state legislature, I've had 2 times the amount of special sessions as I've had regular sessions. And so with that, and I know you guys, and Mr. Viade, I know you're on top of these projects and may start some of them earlier. In the situation that we are called to a special session, and it sounds, I'm just imagining the floor, because obviously the abatement, the ceiling, the tilt up, a lot of seismic, a lot of work's going to be done in those main areas. What would be the plan if we were called to a special session? Where would we be doing that?
Thank you, Assemblymember, for the question. Diane Thornton for the record. With the build out of the west entry, room 3100 is large enough for us to house a committee of the whole. And we have done schematics for that also, if you're interested.
I can just comment, I think it will be a lot roomier. Yesterday, the assembly, the larger body was in the old assembly chambers on top of each other, and I think 3100 would be a nicer place to be and provide us the space. Thank you so much for that. Next, I will go to Majority Leader Canizero.
Thank you, Madam. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions just on the IT side of things. Can you talk to us about whether or not it's possible to delay any of the IT and audiovisual upgrades to the next biennium, or if not, or if that's not wise, why that's necessary to kind of do it now?
And for the record, Tyler Saylor, CIO for the Council Bureau, through the chair. Many of the IT upgrades, and I would say life cycle replacements would be a better thing to call them, because we're really at the end of this hardware's useful life for those asset management items in the list. If we push it out, we risk failures that could take down Session Manager, our websites, or even lead to long recovery times. We do have the ability to recover some of these items, but especially if it were to happen during a legislative session, we could be looking at possibly days of downtime, and that's something we would really like to avoid. And especially some of the software items, like the Session Manager and website plans that we put in this time, we're at a spot where we can no longer really hire folks to work on these systems due to how old the technologies are. And it takes us a couple years to spin someone up that's fresh out of school and teach them how to use technology their parents or their grandparents were working on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It feels a lot like the information we received today. We're just at the very end of even being able to use things, and I think there may be things in this building, certainly IT-wise, that might be older than some of those of us sitting in this room. So, or we're getting we're getting close. So, so that makes a lot of sense to me. And obviously, we want to make sure we have all of those things up and running during and throughout the next legislative session as well. Probably along those same lines, why are all of the IT infrastructure and technology upgrades kind of happening alongside the building pieces? Why is this kind of all at once?
And I'll take that one again. Again, Tyler Saylor through the chair. We have a renewed focus on asset management to the point of our operations chief. We're actually tracking these things now and making systems that allow us to report on them and really faithfully steward the assets of the legislature and the council bureau in a much better way than we did in the past. And also, we pushed a lot of these things off, especially with the infrastructure items. You get 1 or 2 gimmies before you turn it off and it doesn't power back on again, so to speak. And we're at that point for many of these items. We went through the financial crisis, and anyone that was in public sector remembers what that was like. Many budget items were put off, not just for the state, but for the locals as well. And in some ways, we're recovering from that with some of the items we're bringing forth.
And that makes a ton of sense. So thank you very much, and thank you for walking us through all of this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to Speaker Yeager.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you for the very detailed presentation. I have one question on IT projects and then a couple of general questions. So obviously there's a lot here in terms of IT and infrastructure, and I think it was a very salient point that when this building was constructed, we didn't have internet, and I hear there used to be payphones down by the lobbyist room back in the day. I was not here for that. Perhaps others were, but how do these projects that are included here, the technology capital improvement projects, how do they set us up for future success in terms of what we do in this building, in addition to how we stream to Las Vegas and I believe sometimes to Elko as well?
Again, Tyler Saylor through the chair. I'd like to break that up. We have hardware items that are regular life cycle things where they last 7 to 10 years and they're on a replacement cycle, so to speak, things like the servers we mentioned. In terms of really long-term impactful items that set us up for the future, our projects to make a replacement plan for Session Manager and the website are really what's going to set us up for success. We rely on those systems to automate things that used to take a whole pool of secretaries to do, now can be done by one person. And we'd like to continue to offer you that automation, the business efficiency, and make it better and make it meet your needs. When we started the project to automate things with Session Manager, it was quite a long time ago. Technology has changed, and we get a chance to do it over again, make it better, make it fit our needs, and architect it in a way that we won't be having the same conversation 20 years from now. In terms of streaming and connecting all of our sites, we're making improvements so that when a building has a technology problem, it's automatic for those failovers to happen. We don't go down. And also we can make our services available in more places so that if we were to lose Carson City or Reno from a disaster, our resources like Session Manager or its replacement, the public website, and our applications stay online and available to the public, as well as our streaming services that have hundreds of viewers during the session.
Thank you, Chair. And could I ask a couple follow-ups? You know, I think back to when I first got into this building in 2017, and I had my office up on the 3rd floor, but to be honest, I didn't really know what happened in most of the other parts of the building. I think as legislators, we sort of know our area, we know the committee rooms, but when you get back to sort of where legal is or where the director's office is, I think many legislators have never been in those areas. I know legislators haven't been in the Sedway building. And when I became the speaker, to be honest, I was pretty shocked by some of the working conditions that were happening there. And so I would encourage, you know, anyone on this committee or other legislators to ask for a tour of those spaces, see what is actually happening back there. I was just, I was surprised because I think LCB is doing a lot with not enough resources, and you guys do a wonderful job of sort of keeping that from us and letting us do our job. But, I do think we have a responsibility as legislators to make sure that, number one, people are safe in this building, and number two, that staff is treated with dignity. I mean, people working out of closets with electrical boxes is not something that I think any of us should be proud of. And I would think, there's some legal risk there too, right? We have to keep in mind that as legislators, we have a relatively short shelf life, maybe 24 years tops in this building, but there are staff that have been here much longer than that. And, to protect us, I think from an incident happening, these are critical things. And so my first thing is just to recommend to folks to go have a look at what's taking place back there. And I think as, electeds, it's not something that you're going to be proud of. So I give you, I think this is a long time coming in terms of what this building actually needs to be safe and secure. The fact that we have asbestos over the chambers and no fire suppression. I mean, no one would approve this building today if it were built. I think we've done as best as we can in terms of patchwork, but it's time to get serious about this. And so that's my statement. My question, though, is this. I mean, we know as legislators how what happens in this building helps us do our job within 120 days. But I just wondered if you could speak a little bit to what else goes on in this building that helps not just the legislative branch, but other branches of government members of the public, and maybe that's a question for Mr. Killian in legal as well, but I just want to, sort of get on the record, this isn't just about the legislature every 120 days. There's a lot of things that happen in this building that have broader community impacts, and so if you could just maybe talk a little bit about that in terms of how this helps more than just the legislative branch.
Thank you, Speaker Diane Thornton, for the record. I appreciate that question because this is a public building, and as you know, we constantly have tours, for example, with all our school children. There's a constant flow, especially during the interim. And there's other things that go on here, aside from just the tours. We do other public meetings that get teleconference from Las Vegas to this building during the interim. And in general, just if you look at the opening of 3100 and 2200, how busy those rooms have been with all the different organizations that have been in the building during session, including the foyer. We've had constant slew of people with tables out there with showing what they do in nonprofits. And so there is a constant flow of people that come through this building as a public building. We'd like to offer a facility that's upgraded, more modern, that has safety and fire suppression, and it should be a safer place, not just for the public, but also for staff and for our legislators.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Speaker through the chair. In addition to everything Diane mentioned, which there's a lot of stuff that happens in the building over the interim, staffing the legislature is a pleasure of the legal division. We love drafting your bills. We love drafting your amendments. Once we finish doing that, we turn right back to doing that job for the executive branch. We draft a couple hundred regulations for the executive branch every interim. That process actually continues during the session. When we have downtime in between drafting bills, we are actually also drafting regulations for the executive branch at the same time. So your staff is providing an incredible level of service to the executive branch throughout the biennium in this building. And part of the document storage you see, that's the storage for bills, which bleeds out into the hallway. We also have many multiples of that in terms of the regulation files we have to keep for the executive branch in perpetuity. And I don't want to speak too much to what the other divisions do. I know legal is staffing the executive branch for, frankly, more time each biennium than we are staffing the legislative branch. The research division also provides a constituent services unit that is providing services to the public throughout the biennium, not just during the session. I know fiscal is working with their counterparts in the state and in local governments throughout the biennium to stay on top of budgets and make sure things are accounted for properly. Your audit division is also performing audits of all of the executive branch agencies on a cycle throughout the biennia to be able to bring that information back to you, but also to help those executive branch agencies actually carry out their functions properly and provide them the advice they need to be able to function properly during the biennium. So staffing the legislature is obviously our honor and our pleasure, but we frankly do more work for the other branches of government throughout the biennium than we do for the legislature each biennium.
Thank you for that response. I think that's helpful just to remind folks that this isn't just about the 120-day session. That's what we see when we're here, certainly. And so thank you for that. And just one quick point and then another question. I do want to say I think the front of the building, the new 3100 and the new 2200, kudos for getting that done. Everyone has complimented that space, and to your point, it's overbooked already at the beginning of session with groups who want to participate in the legislative process, and I just think that's a wonderful addition to the building. And so I know there are a lot of people that worked really hard to get that up and running, and I didn't think the front of the building, frankly, was going to be open for session. So thank you to everyone who worked on that. One quick question, if I could, Chair, about the parking garage that you talked about. The anticipated new parking garage, is that going to be limited to the legislature, or is that available for anybody to use, anybody in Carson City to use at any point during the year?
Thank you, Speaker Yeager, for the question. Diane Thornton, for the record. That'll be a public facility, open to everyone in Carson City.
Could I ask just one more? I'm sorry, Chair. The last one I just wanted to ask, and this is, I guess, sort of the question nobody really wants to ask, but I think it's the question that should have probably been asked by folks who sat in these seats before us, and that's just, what if we say no to all this? What if we don't do any of these upgrades and improvements? What if we don't advance the capital improvement project? Like, what does that mean for the legislature? And has there any analysis that's been done about what the cost could be in the future if we continue to delay and don't take care of these issues now?
Thank you for the question, Diane Thornton, for the record. At best, this is a question about continuity of government. A lot of the IT projects are at their end of life. For example, session manager, as you mentioned, is 30 years old and older than some of the people in this building. That touches everything that you do, everything that legal does, everything that research, any of the divisions do. So without that, we can no longer function as a legislature.
Thank you. I thought you were going to leave me with a good segue, no pun intended, to transition to Assemblymember Torres on the parking garage.
Thank you, and thank you so much for all that you all do to keep us running. But I think this presentation really highlighted some of the needs that we have to both serve the legislature better, but also serve members of the public. I believe that the enhancements that we have made to 3100 and also the new cafe space have really enhanced the experience that people have and make it a more welcoming space so that the public can participate in the legislative process. But you're right, the constant complaint is the parking. I've had meeting after meeting this session where somebody's coming from Reno or from a different agency within Carson City, and they're trying to find parking and they're 15 minutes late. Obviously we have to give that individual grace, but it does have an impact on the work experience that we have, but also their experience here in the legislative building. And I think it could be a deterrent for members of the public from participating. I know that I just plan my entire life around whether or not parking is accessible. And so I think that is an issue. I have also heard a number of complaints about the lack of EV parking available. Is there going to be a plan to ensure that there is adequate EV parking, especially as EVs become more common in our community?
Yes, there is a plan to add additional EV parking to that parking structure. Right now, we're working with NV Energy to figure out, how much we can actually tie into the system. But we're thinking there'll probably be around 20 to 40 additional EV stations in that parking structure.
Well, thank you. I think, members, do we have any other questions for our Legislative Council Bureau? Well, thank you so much for your comprehensive presentation and answering all of our questions. I know all of us really do appreciate everything you do because it makes us be able to do our job. And so with that, thank you for your presentation on the one-time appropriations and capital improvement projects. With that, we can go to move to our last item on the agenda, which is public comment. I don't believe we have anyone here in Carson City wishing to give public comment. It doesn't look like there's anyone in our hearing room in Las Vegas, so we will go to the phone lines. AVH, do we have anyone this morning wishing to give public comment?
Thank you, Chair. The public lines are open and working. However, we don't have any callers to provide public comment at this time.
Fantastic. With that, we can go ahead and close our meeting.